welcome to Solo Power Shroud Reaper. As you can see from the introduction, this isn't a build for all occasions. This is for PvE chiefly, for dungeons, for story mode certainly, and for being solo around the world. It's not designed for raids, for World v World, and for PvP, or higher end fractals either. So you could tinker with this and make it suitable for that, but just understand that's not what it's designed for. This is really designed for you've come to level 80 and you've been happy perhaps with your build so far, or maybe you're not so happy anymore with your build and you're wanting something that's going to kick out a lot of damage but still has elements of survivability. So let's start off with the armor. All of the armor is Berserker pieces. Power, precision, and ferocity. Power for damage, precision for accuracy, and ferocity is how hard you hit. Those are the three elements of a Berserker piece of armor, and that is what you will want on every piece of your armor. For your runes, now the meta for power would be the rune of the Scholar. I've gone for the rune of the Ogre, as you can see. Bear in mind that this is a solo Power Shroud Reaper. So in other words, you're not really looking at how you can support other players and other team members in this build. You're looking at what helps you get as much damage as possible while staying alive. So you are free to change that rune as you see fit. Now the reason I went for Rune of the Ogre is simply on point 6. So points 1 to 5 are exactly the same between the Rune of the Ogre and Rune of the Scholar. It is just point 6. That's the difference. Rune of the Scholar, the 5% damage that it does is conditional on being above 90% health. Now bearing in mind this is a solo build, you are not going to be consistently above 90% health. You will when you start the battle, so your burst would be 1% higher than this rune, but after that initial burst you're not going to be staying at 90% or above in your health. Well, you might, as it happens with this one, bearing in mind this is a Shroud Reaper, but you won't be relying on that with this build. You can dip below that 90% health ratio and you can be sure that you will still get 4% unconditional damage. Whether you swap your weapons, no matter what boons you've got, no matter what conditions are raining down on you, and even if you're down to your last couple of hundred of health, you will still be kicking out 4% extra overall damage no matter what. I like that instead of the conditional health gain with the Scholars. What you will lose by not having the Scholars is the 125 ferocity, but this build has ferocity built in later on to make up for that so that you're losing nothing. You'll be surprised how much damage that rock dog kicks out. It can easily take down a level 80 enemy, let's say in ore or in the desert, all on its own without you doing a thing. It won't take down a champ or an elite on its own, but please swap that rune out for whatever suits you. If you wanted to go with the meta damage, you'll want Rune of the Scholar. Trinkets, they're all Berserker as well. Every piece Berserker. For the weapons, as you can see, I have Axe and Warhorn here. That's really your offhand set. I've got these the wrong way around. This is your main weapon that you'll be using most of the time. Swap to the other ones when it suits you or when it's advantageous to do so, but otherwise your main weapon is going to be the Great Sword, which again is going to be Berserker. Sigils. Now the Sigil of Force at 5% damage, that is standard. Any power build, one of your slots on a two-handed or one of your weapons, if it's one-handed, will always have superior Sigil of Force, that 5% unconditional damage all the time. What that doesn't do is stack. So in other words, you can't have another Sigil of Force on this weapon, and you cannot have another Sigil of Force on another hand. I mean, the mechanics will let you put it in, but it will have no effect. They do not stack, so you will not get 10% damage. But you wouldn't want to be without one. That is the standard. So what we're really looking at is the second sigil in your weapon. I've chosen Sigil of the Night. Now please, choose whichever sigil suits you best. Your style of play, whatever conditions are set, whether you like it on weapon swap, on a kill, on critical hit, whatever takes your fancy. Sigil of the Air, there's all sorts of different types of sigils. You're not stuck to what I've put here. You're free. You are really stuck to Sigil of Force, the first one. I've gone for Sigil of the Night, and the reason I have is that I do get another 3% that's unconditional. So I couldn't have the 10% with 2 sigils of force because they don't stack, but I can get 3% with Sigil of the Night, so I will have a standard 8% increased damage on everything that I do. What I also get with Sigil of the Night is when it is no longer daytime, when it's nighttime, I will get an additional 7%. Now then, the day-night cycle is not like the real world in Guild Wars. It is much, much faster. So you could easily find yourself either entering a story mode, for example, and you just don't know if it's day or night when you go into the story. Also, if it was a dungeon or a prolonged encounter, or you were playing one of the metas on the maps, you can easily switch into night very, very quickly during a prolonged period. And how nice it is, or at least I find it really nice, that suddenly I'm doing an extra 7% damage. I don't think of it the other way. You could think of it as daytime you're losing 7%. I don't think of it that way. I think daytime I've got 8%, the 5 and the 3, and it's completely unconditional. And then when nighttime comes, or if a situation is nightbound, I'm suddenly getting an extra 7%. I really like that, but again, switch out the sigil for whatever suits you. Okay, let's have a look at the build. So the 3 trait lines are Reaper, Soul Reaping, and Spite. Let's have a look at each one of these for the solo power Shroud Reaper. These first 3 here, you can do nothing about, but let's concentrate more on the ones we can choose. So here I've gone for Spiteful Talisman, deal increased damage to foes with no boons. Okay, most of your mobs are going to be foes with no boons. Also, you noticed earlier that in the weapon swap, my second set is the axe, so this will reduce the recharge of the axe skills by 20%. Next one, Might grants you more power and less condition damage. Better still, every time you enter Shroud, you're going to get this Might with this extra power. Now, because this is a solo power Shroud Reaper build, you will be using Shroud a lot, so that extra Might is really useful. Lastly, you want Close to Death. Increase damage to enemies below the health threshold. So once they go below 50%, your damage increases 20%. Into Soul Reaping, there are 3 you can't choose. Increase the amount of life force gained from all sources. Life force is this bar here, similar to the adrenaline bar in Warrior. This is life force, and that life force drains when you go into the Shroud, which is this button here. You go into the Shroud, it gives you other skills, very powerful skills, and it drains this life force, not your health, but your life force down. The other one is Sinister Shroud. Shroud skills gain reduced recharge. Again, like I said, because this is a Shroud Reaper build, you'll be in Shroud as much as you can, so having the skills reduced in time is good. And maximum life force is increased, so how long you can be in the Shroud is increased by having this third one. You can't do anything about this 3 anyway, but it's a good. Soul Reaping is a great line for doing Shroud. I've gone here for Speed of Shadows. Entering Shroud grants swiftness and removes movement impairing conditions. Soul Barbs. Entering or exiting Shroud, we'll be doing that often, increases your damage for a duration. Finally, Death Perception. Gain increased critical strike chance and ferocity in Shroud. So when you've gone into Shroud, this is a Shroud Reaper build, so we'll be doing that as much as possible. Your critical chance will increase by 33%, and how hard you hit will increase by 300. A great skill for what we're wanting when we're talking about Shroud. Okay, now we come to Reaper, and of course we've got the 3 we can do nothing about. Let's have a look at the 3 we can choose. Chilling Nova. Not surprised to hear chilled come up again, are you? Create a Nova at the target that damages and chills nearby foes. So it does a little bit of damage to 5 targets around you. You get that chill yet again. Critical hits against chilled foes cause an explosion that chills adjacent foes. So if you've got a chilled foe and you do a critical hit against him, which you might well do when you're in Shroud with this extra chance here, but even without that extra chance, you're running a power build, so the chances of you doing critical hits are much higher anyway. So critical hits against chilled foes cause an explosion that chills adjacent foes. So whichever way you look, you're doing extra hits, extra chill, and then extra damage to those that are chilled. Next, striking foes within Soul Eater. Striking foes within the range threshold deals increased damage and heals you for a portion of the damage dealt. Lastly, we've gone for Reaper's Onslaught. Gain ferocity and quickness while in Reaper's Shroud. Hitting the life reap reduces the recharge time of Shroud skills. Okay, let's have a look at the skills. So this is your auto hit. which is very nice. You'll also notice, if you will, the third hit, you want to let the auto attack fulfill. In other words, get right to the end, because the third attack will chill foes. Now, if you remember, we've got extra damage when they're chilled, so that's going to be very nice. It's also good for your life force. This is a very powerful hit. Now, if your enemy is below 50%, it recharges immediately. You're not waiting 8 seconds. So that's very nice indeed, once the threshold of the health of your enemies is down. And if you're in a mob, or if you've got a whole group around you, you only need one of them to be below 50% for this skill to recharge. So if there's 6 around you and you're swinging that sword around, so long as one of them is below 50%, you can keep doing it. Conjure a drill of dark energy in your blade and rend the armor of foes in front of you. It inflicts a lot of vulnerability, and the damage is very nice too. Call down a growing column of shadows that damages and conditions foes every pulse. The condition is not important to us, but the blind is nice. There's 4 pulses, a blind of 2 seconds, and obviously that gives you a bit of survivability. And grasping darkness. Conjure claws of darkness from the shadows to attack foes, applying a condition to them. Well, wouldn't you know it, the condition is chilled, and we do extra damage to chilled enemies. Gain life force for each foe you strike, and it pulls them towards you as well, ready to activate your other skills. For the utilities, for my healing, I've gone for your soul is mine. Heal yourself, gain life force, and strike foes around you. To be honest, the striking foes around you isn't a big deal. It's not a lot of damage. But from every foe that you strike, if you activated this while there are enemies around you, in other words, right in the heat of battle, for every enemy that it hits, forget that the damage isn't much, if it hits 5 enemies, you will get 3% life force per each hit that you've done. And the reason why we want that additional life force is so we can get back into Shroud all the quicker. I will come back to this signet in a moment. These 2 wells, you put this one down, does decent damage, and it blinds on every pulse as well. And it does chill. So you're chilling, you're getting the extra damage, which by now is insanely high. Every time they're chilled, blindness, so they're struggling to hit you back with a nice bit here, and then you just put this one on top, which is extra damage on the last one, plus invulnerability. These 2 are very painful for the mob to be in. This one, I've chosen this. You'd have thought I'd have enough chill by now, wouldn't you? But this one does slight damage, not too bad, does the chill, does stability, and does stun. So you've stunned the 5 targets around you, and you've chilled them, you've done some damage. You cannot be interrupted while the stability is up, and you're ready to go into Shroud and finish them off. It really is a really nice skill to have, but it's also optional. I said I'd come back to the signet. It's unusual, to say the least, to have this signet in any power build, but like I said, this power build is not designed for groups, this is designed for solo. Now, although you've got lots of things like the chill and the damage, and when you're in the Shroud, you're doing extra damage and all these kind of things, there isn't very much survivability for your HP pool. To get this back up, yes, to get back into Shroud, and really you want to be in and out of Shroud as much as you can, into Shroud as much as you can, and when you get out, you're looking to get back into it as quickly as you can. When this isn't possible, when it just means you're down to your own health pool, this isn't supremely high because we're running a power build. So I've put in this safety catch here. Again, swap it out for any skill that you think is more suitable or would be better for you. Something that you find does more damage, or anything that you find is suitable. But let me explain first why I've chosen it. Your movement speed is increased, which is great because you are a melee with your greatsword. You're not doing fighting at range. Your axe can fight at range, but that's, situational as to when you switch into it. Most of the time you're in Shroud and you're up close and personal. So to have this movement speed is really helpful. But when you activate it, look what it says. Strike and remove boons from nearby enemies. Okay, we're not too worried about boons from nearby enemies because we've got traits that hit when there's no boons, we've got traits that hit when there are boons, so we're not worried about that. But this is why it's in here. Heal for each foe you strike and for each boon removed. So you will do 1,500 healing per hit. Now remember, even our heal here is only 4,500. So if you've got, and the number of targets permissible here is 5, you have 5 targets around you, and you trigger this as a secondary heal, you are getting more healing than that one's giving you. This one will give you the life force, but when it's your health pool, remember we're talking about, you've got no life force, you're out of it, and this is running down. You trigger this when enemies are around you. You hit 5 targets within a 600 radius, so it's not even super close to 300, 600 radius, and you're talking already over 7,000 heal. On top of that, any of those enemies that had a boon, you're going to get an extra 645. So swap that out. If you find you do not need survivability, if you find this is doing enough damage and you never feel threatened or in danger, then by all means swap that out with my blessing. But for those of you who want to go cautiously, who perhaps, like I said, are coming out of your current level 80 build, and you want to go with something more damage, but you're worried about survivability, this is your secondary heal. If you're not surrounded by a group, don't use it. Use this one, only this one. But if you're in the middle of a fight and your health pool is whittling down and you can't shift into Shroud, hit that and it is your get out of jail card free. Well, that is this simple, easy to use, very high damage with an element of survivability, solo power Shroud Reaper build. I really hope it was helpful.